It'll-
You know that psychology thing where they keep the first and last letters the same
Mhm,
and then they scramble the letters in the middle?
mhm.
That's how I type by default. Oh, let me get the mic out here. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. Saying hello in the chat and reminding people to ask questions. And I'll even make it all caps so you see it. Uh, just note that on occasion we don't get to every question, so please do ask early. And I tend to get lost in the question list later on, so if you don't want me to accidentally miss your question, it's best to be in the top half of the list. So if you have anything urgent that you want to make sure gets discussed today, be sure to ask those questions early. Um, in the news, I saw that Google was playing around with the citations in AI mode again, and I am still not a fan. Like they are showing three, then you can click to see more. And if there are 17 citations, when you click the show all button, it shows you six. And then it doesn't display a scroll bar, so you don't even know that it's scrollable. So if you're behind the click and below the fold, your citations are never seen. And, call me crazy, but if I was in college and I wrote a paper and I obfuscated the citations, I would get an F minus on that and potentially kicked out of the college for plagiarism. And that's an allowable standard for Google.
So are you calling for transparency and ease of use, sir?
I think, call me crazy, call me crazy. I think if Google wanted to properly and honestly and honorably and lawfully cite their sources, they could, but they're playing this, well, technically it's not a crime. We just put user interactions in front of them. But really, it's plagiarism, it's theft. They aren't citing their sources in a way that is acceptable for the people who did the work to make the content they're using. And so, yeah, no, Google, I don't like it. And I think everyone should be outraged and appalled by the hypocrisy because Google identifies themselves as the academic brand. We only hire the smartest geniuses who came through the academic system, and we draw from academics because that's the right way to do things, but not on citations. We're going to use your content and hide those. All right, Google, do better. Do better. Your citations are appalling and embarrassing academically. You're plagiarists. You get an F minus on this. Academically, F minus, kicked out of the college.
So
All in favor?
I'm going to ask you a question, and by doing so, I'm appointing you resident SEO historian. When did Google remove "Don't be evil" from there?
I believe it was after people started quitting because they were building software for drones bombing the Middle East.
And that was when approximately? How long have they gone away from the "Don't be evil"?
I I don't remember. That's that's kind of the same time frame though. So if you looked up, people quitting because of drones, that's
Yeah.
probably the ballpark.
That's been a while.
2018, Lee. It's been actually quite a while. It's been 8 years.
I would have
2018.
suspected longer, but yeah, it's been a while. So
I'll settle with, hey, Google, don't be a douche. Like, can we keep it more basic than that? And,
Yeah,
and
that,
Ted, your explanation of Google being like, hey, it's technically not illegal, that is exactly how they think. I remember this is going back like 15 years. It was an SMX back in the Matt Cutts days. Or it may even be more than 15 years ago. I don't know how long he's been gone. But people were this, they had just come out and said you can't use, they just came out and said you can't get links. You basically they were coming out against links, and then saying, oh well, if you're going to do, you can't buy links, yada yada. And everybody's like, well, I can buy a link if Ted has customers that I want and I want a link from his site. Why can't I buy a link? And Google's response in their standard arrogant fashion was, you can do anything you want. We just won't include you in Google. You don't have to be in Google if you don't want to. It's like, yeah, but you're a public utility essentially. You're the only search engine. So you damn well know that not getting included in Google means not existing. That would be like could you imagine the yellow pages? So you're going to get me on a mini rant here. Could you imagine the yellow
well,
pages saying, Ted, I don't like the name of your company. You can't use that name. And you say, I have the right to use whatever name you want. Say, you're right, you can, but we just don't have to put you in the yellow pages. Could you
mhm.
imagine that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s? It's like, well, everybody goes to the yellow pages. The
yeah.
yellow pages dictating to people what they can and can't do to their business. Because that's essentially what Google does. Um, all right, end of rant.
No, I'm with you, man. It's all overreach. The world was better before because we had freedom before, and there's nobody stepping in to tell Google when it's too far. And this citation nonsense, man, I hope somebody takes up that fight because this is some bullshit and they know it. The
Yeah.
geniuses over at Google know how to cite a reference. They're choosing not to. Um, so
Yeah, it's a pain, but I will point out that you set off Charles, and he actually used the word douche, which is pretty strong language for Charles.
yeah, I'm gonna start calling them douchel until they start citing things properly.
I'll put $1 in the swear jar, Lee.
Yeah,
All right.
somebody grab the domain name and forward it to Google. And then we can get everyone to bookmark it. All right. So, anything anyone would like to announce? If
No, I don't have anything.
I saw Terry on mute.
just more of a counterpoint to yours and Charles's mini rants there. Um, Imagine the screen space that would be taken up if they showed all those. There'd be no rankings at all, at least on the first couple pages. It would all be your AI overviews and then citations.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about AI mode. So that's a whole different layout, and they've left the whole right side for citations, and they choose to show three an empty white space as far as the document scrolls. Like there is absolutely no reason why they stop at three. And then they have a show more button, so it requires another server click. And then it'll show six of the 17, even though they said the button is show all. Six is not all, but they'll say it's all because it's a scrollable six without a scroll bar. Why did they hide the scroll bar? Oh, it's more aesthetically pleasing? No, it's so people wouldn't know it's there. The whole
I see
thing
a
is,
scroll bar. I see a scroll bar when I click on show all, but and not consistently six. It varies a lot.
yeah,
But
I'm
maybe
I'm I'm on
search dependent.
Chrome on a Mac and the scroll bar isn't there. I mean, what the hell? And Google Google does change the design based on the browser version you're running. So if you went to Opera, you would see different features and different design. So there will, Terry is right. You will see variants from different browsers and different platforms. But Chrome on a Mac, I mean, it's Chrome. So there's no excuse in my mind.
I'm all for seeing the citations, but I don't want to see a paragraph for each citation.
No,
There'll be no room for anything else on page one.
the honest thing to do is just to say here's the link, you know. You could treat it like a citation in a book or in a paper. It doesn't
The,
have to be a full-on search result even.
the Googlers are so smart. I trust that they could figure out a way to cite without it taking over the page. I agree
Yeah,
that it
yeah.
could take over the page, but I believe the Googlers are so smart they could fix that problem relatively quickly if they needed to.
Yeah, and honestly, I think they're too smart because they could have put 10 blue links, but instead they had to engineer this web service show more or show all that's a lie that takes you to slightly more. Uh, and then they've obfuscated the scroll. And holy shit.
If they were smarter, they'd have shown 8 blue links and sold the other 2 blue links.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're not in the top 3 citations, you're effectively page 2, and then on page 2, if you're not in the top 6, you're effectively invisible. I mean, your citation just doesn't count, I guess.
Well, I think Google's stance is probably something along the lines of, "We've given you the damn answer. Why do you want to see the research?"
Well, it's funny. I asked Gemini what the difference between a source and a citation is. And they said, well, the citation is how you're supposed to properly disclose the sources. So it's supposed to show you the value of the research that was done. It's supposed to avoid plagiarism by letting people know directly where the information came from. And it's like, no, Google's not doing those things. That it's even defying the definition of a citation. And I notice when you click on it, they call it a source. And that, they're even playing word games on it. And it's so dishonorable, it's so deceptive. I think it's horrible that they would do that. And they're doing it to everyone. I mean, but it's wrong. It's plagiarism. If I get if I get kicked out of college for it, they should at least get some shame for doing it. Just my opinion. All right, Lee. Let me make sharing available. And Lee is going to tell us about the numbers.
A little bit, a little bit, maybe. All right, let's do this. Do this. Let's go like this. Move this crap out of my way. Whoops. All right, let's get up here. That'll do it. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about correlation. And it's timely, as I've seen a number of discussions about this. I started thinking about this topic a week or so ago and outlining it. And actually, it's going to be a two-parter. So today we're going to talk about correlation, the measurement, how it's measured, and some of those pieces. And then next week, we will get into causation. All right, so I'm going to start off really, really simple because you can deep dive down into the stuff, but correlation is basically a formula, and it measures how tightly dots cluster around a line. And I've highlighted two pieces there because they're both important. The first is how tightly the dots cluster, which is where we'll be focused mostly today. But it also has to be around a line because this is a measurement. It's a linear measurement, so it doesn't do curves and things like that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But a lot of times when I see people talk about correlation, they give it a lot more meaning than is there in the formula. And so today I want to just talk about that measurement and give people some intuition about when it's valuable and when it may not be as valuable, when it's, clearly showing you what you think it is, and when it may be deceiving you a little bit. So thoughts on that, Mr. Kubaitis, since you are, as I recall, you have a correlation-based software.
Yeah, I always like to describe it as an estimation of the slope of the trend line. And so you can kind of tell, kind of which way the chart would lean for the data. And it's always why I hate it when peoples do their correlation studies and they just artificially change the negative to positive because they think it'll be better received. It's like, no, now what you're claiming doesn't match the chart of the data you have.
Right.
That negative number means something important. And that negative symbol can often mean more of something leads to better outcome, or it could mean less of something leads to better outcome. And, you don't want to ignore the subtleties of the math. And even that positive negative sign is important.
It
But
is.
Ted, I talked to my marketing team and they were concerned customers would be confused. So they want me to take the negative number out.
Now you just
They
triggered
won't,
it, Charles.
they won't let me, I can't release it unless I get approval from my marketing team.
He's right though. That you do see a lot of that stuff, and you're like, wait, no, that's
Yeah.
wrong. And they're trying to do it because usually positive means positive slope means a positive outcome, a negative slope means a negative outcome, but that's not always the case. So
Yeah. But
sometimes,
I
yeah,
I agree 100% with you, Ted. I mathematically you're what I know the converse I've had
Yeah.
these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, and we're in kind of an interesting niche because we tend to correlate factors where the numbers get bigger the more you use a factor, but we tend to measure it against rankings where being smaller is better. And because of that, when you chart, a factor measurement on the y-axis and your Google rank on the x-axis, most beneficial factors have a negative correlation because the
mhm,
more you use it, the closer to number one you get.
yeah,
And so when we see all these SEO case studies and they take away the negative, I look at it and I'm like, you're saying more of this will hurt people.
yeah,
um,
Many decades ago, I worked at a company. I did software support, and I did the manual. And one of the sales team came to me and said, "Hey, can you do some graphics for me?" And it really was just I used Paint to make graphics, but I made some charts for him, of various charts, lines going up, lines going down, yada yada yada. And the one sales guy saw the chart I made with a line going down, says, "Oh, you got to get rid of that." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, because every customer will fixate on that line going down. You
yeah.
need to make all the lines going up. And so that was my new rule. All lines have to go up and to the right.
Okay. So let's move a little bit on this one. So here's an example where something's very tightly clustered. The correlation is 0.93 here. Now, correlation runs from -1 to +1, and so here you've got something that's very, very strong. It's closing in on a near perfect correlation. It's a near perfect line. And so here in this particular example, the line is y equals x and the dots are plus or minus 20 from the line. So you can kind of see that, everything is in a band around the line. If we make that a little bit wider, you can see it's plus or minus 40. The correlation drops because, again, correlation is about how tightly clustered it is around a line. So let me just go back and forth a couple of times so you can see, as it goes wider, the correlation drops. So, a lot of the stuff that we're going to see, and we'll talk about here in a minute, a lot of the SEO stuff almost looks like a damn cloud. It's just dispersed, even further than, some of these things here. So I was talking to Charles yesterday, and Charles said, you need to talk about what correlation isn't. And I said, that is a good freaking idea. So Charles, this one's for you, bud. So here you have two charts. Correlation is not slope, but as Ted said, a positive correlation means, it goes up and to the right. A negative correlation means it goes down and to the right. But because it's not the slope, correlation is just how tightly grouped around a line stuff is, how tightly clustered. It doesn't tell you where the line is or how steep the line is. That's what slope does. Slope tells you sort of the steepness of the line. So here everything goes, down from 0, 0, the origin up. But this thing could start at 5,000. It could start at negative something. There's no telling where the line is and the range of the line. So it's not slope. It's also not a prediction. A lot of people look at correlation and say, "Ooh, there's prediction." And this is one that I want people to pay attention to today. Usually for prediction, we use regression, which is a cousin of correlation. It's modified by the standard deviation, and it has a slope of the line, it has the intercept of the line. So you can kind of say, well, if I know X, I can kind of predict where Y is. That's what regression does. Here, all of the correlation does is say, are we tightly grouped around whatever the line is, wherever it is, or not?
All right. Now, before we bore everyone to death,
Yep.
Let's talk briefly about what correlation can do for you, because what I like about correlation is that I can use it to kind of narrow the playing field. So I like to tell people that Cora looks at thousands of factors and reduces the field of possibilities down to 2 or 3 dozen that have some statistical evidence behind them. Doesn't mean they are factors, but we've at least narrowed it down to ones that statistically might be. And, and I think there's value in that because,
Oh,
we've
absolutely.
we've found over, 250,000 possible SEO factors, and being able to reduce it down to 36 likely suspects, that's kind of been very useful over the years.
Oh, absolutely. I love, love, love correlation, and I use it all the time, even outside of Quora. I use, correlation analysis. But I think the piece that I want to get with people here is to understand what it does and what it doesn't do, because there are some common mistakes that are made with correlation and Quora, where people will sit there and say, this correlates highly, therefore, and it's the therefore that I want to make sure that people understand. You sometimes can go way off the reservation with very
Yep.
therefores.
Yep. And there are issues of data quality with correlation because in Cora, often any of the positive correlation coefficients aren't negative factors. They aren't things where the more of it you use, the worse you'll rank. It tends to just be data problems.
Yeah.
And so they ended up positive.
And we're going to talk about that too. You know all the goodies. So here, this one gets to your point, where we talk about correlation is not causation. True. But any situation where you have causation, correlation exists. So it's a prerequisite, but it's not sufficient by itself. We're going to talk about that next week. It doesn't measure curved relationships, and it's not robust, meaning it's very, very sensitive to the data, which I'm going to show you in a minute. If you take nothing else away from today, always look at the freaking plot. Always, always, always. So here we have, 4 different plots. You've got a correlation that's 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, 0.7. And most of the stuff that we do in SEO, rarely do we get a 0.5 or higher correlation. Rarely.
Yeah, and this is great because it shows why correlation isn't the slope. Because in those top two, there's a lot of different ways you could draw the trend line. So there's margin of error on where the trend line can be placed.
Exactly.
And when you look at the bottom two, well, then correlation kind of does align better with slope.
Yes.
And so it's like correlation might be uh, an estimation of slope in certain cases, but often not. But you have to know this part of the data to know when you can say, oh, I think in this case, the correlation is going to be similar to the trend line.
Yeah. Yeah. Can be. Absolutely. Now, for most of the stuff that we do, and if you actually, for those of you that use Cora, most of your data plots are going to look like this one, which means you kind of got to squint to see the relationship. And real quick, for 100 data points, correlation of 0.197 is statistically significant. Now, what the hell does that mean? Really quick, what it means is this. It's how confident we are that the pattern is real and not just a lucky accident. So if I go back to this and we look at this, this looks like a handful, a roll of pennies that have been dropped on a desk. Now, they happen to drop where, there's sort of a pattern in there, but is it a pattern, or is it we drop some pennies and they happen to form in something that looks like a pattern? That's what statistical significance tries to measure. And so when we're saying at 95%, which is the standard everybody uses, it means there's a 5% chance that we're tricked by random noise.
Yeah, I like to word it in my mind is how likely is it that this is just a common random outcome?
Yeah. So with Cora, if we have 100 data points, Ted always has it in a nice orange in that 0.197. Once we hit that, once we've got a correlation of 0.197, we start to say, you know what? It's more likely that it is not random than it is. It's at a level where we think that, this is a pretty good chance that there is a meaningful relationship here. It doesn't mean it's causal. It just means that these two things are associated with each other some way. The other thing is high certainty requires a lot more data points. So I see a lot of people use Cora and they have this 0.197 and they'll go, ooh, I correlated the top 10 and I got a 0.46. That's freaking awesome. I'm like, well, your threshold there is 0.63. That's the difference here. So as you have fewer data points, you have to have it much closer to a line than you do down here, where it can be this fuzzy nebulous cloud with 1,000 data points, and yet we can pick out that it's unlikely to be a random pattern.
And so the argument you often hear in SEO that's relevant to what Lee's talking about here is, measurement data is pointless because you would need millions and billions of samples to be able to statistically know anything at all. And that's just not true because all we're really doing is we're trying to look for clues on the default sort order. So the analogy I like to use is if I went to Amazon and went to a product category and I decided to randomly sort the data, how many data samples would you need to figure out how that category is sorted? Especially once you start seeing in the first one, the price is $1,000. The second one, the price is $800. The third one, the price is $400. The next one, the price is $350, and so on. I mean, how many samples will it take the average person to figure out that one of the factors is price?
Mhm.
You don't even need 100 samples for a lot of the cases.
Right.
And so the notion that you would need billions of samples to figure out what's contributing to sort order, it's just patently false.
So the whole
I,
thing I want people to take away from the significance piece is all it's doing is saying it needs to be at a certain level before you start to think it's probably not random. That's it. Charles, do you have
so
something?
yeah, I just want to talk about significance because I've seen that misused so much. Is significance, if something is statistically significant, if a correlation is statistically significant, does that mean a correlation exists?
Well, yeah, it means a correlate because again, a correlation
I'm
is
sorry, I
clustered
should
around a
clarify. Does
line.
that mean a causation
No,
exists?
no. I want you to think about it this way. I think this is helpful for people. If I take 50 pennies out of a roll and I drop them down on my desk, most of the time they're going to be just scattered all over the place. There's going to be no discernible pattern. But maybe 1 out of 20, it looks like, they kind of are elongated. It kind of looks like it goes, up into the right or back into the right, or whatever. It looks like there's some sort of clustering around there. That's all it's doing. Is it saying this pattern looks like it's less likely to be random? That's all. It doesn't mean that it's meaningful, and it doesn't mean that it's predictive of anything. It doesn't mean that it's causal of anything. It just means, you know what, there's enough coherence to it that, it could be something. It's more likely something than not, but it's not a guarantee.
So if I can paraphrase it for you and
Yeah.
stop me if I'm wrong, statistical significance is just telling you that, like your first point says, this is a pattern versus this is just a bunch of random numbers. It's
Mhm.
not saying that the numbers are correct. It's just they're saying they're not a random drop, random roll of the dice or a random drop of the pins on the floor or whatever.
It's
Yeah,
less likely, less
less
likely.
likely to
Less
be
likely.
random.
Because, and I ask this because I've seen so many people use statistical significance incorrectly to say that, well, that means this number is right. That's not
No,
what
no,
that
no, no,
says.
no, no.
It's the
It's,
therefores that
yes,
get you in trouble.
yes. And I've had so
Yeah.
many folks in enterprise who didn't understand that would then use it improperly. And I would get into very long discussions and arguments with them where they just, but it's significant. It's and the analysis team told us that it was statistically significant. I'm like, yes, but that doesn't mean it's right. It just means that it's not random. They didn't get that.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't. I mean, it's hard for, we're not, human beings aren't really good at probabilistic reasoning anyway. So you start to throw complex layers on top of it, and then you just lose people really, really quick.
Yep.
So a guy named Francis Anscombe came up with this, and this is important for people to understand where correlation can go wrong. What he did was he created these four graphs. These have 11 data points on each one of them. And the unique thing about these four graphs is that they all have exactly the same correlation, 0.816. And if we go back to our little chart here, at 10, we only need a 0.63. So all of these, and 0.99, which is a 1% chance of being random, says it's 0.765. So when we start going here and we got a 0.81, it says it's very statistically significant. It's very likely that there is a linear association there. Well, if you take a look at the graphs, that's not true. This first one looks like the classic, things that we've been looking at. More goes up and to the right and it tends to cluster around the line. This one is clearly a curve. And if we extended it out further, more probably drops it off because that's the way that relationship looks. This one is one of my favorites because it's a perfect line with one outlier. That to me looks like a data error, more likely than not. That's what experience has shown me. And the same thing is true of this one. Looks like an outlier. Looks like everything else here is a perfect line, but this is a data error. Now, I'll ask you, Charles, as our resident non-statistician, do these tell you the same story?
Well, they are statistically significant, correct?
I knew that was
Yeah,
coming.
You knew that was coming.
I knew that
But
was
no,
they're
yeah,
coming.
they're all right.
yeah, yeah, clearly each of these graphs are showing us a different story, clearly. But
Yeah. But we sit there and say, hey, I did this thing and it has a 0.81 correlation, statistically significant at a 0.99 level. Everybody's like, ooh, it means. And our minds naturally go to this sort of view right here. They naturally think, oh, there's a relationship, it's linear, it's clustered around the line nicely, it's predictive, it's probably causal. That's the way our minds work when we think about graphs like this and when we think about correlation.
Yeah,
that number 4 graph, I see that number 4 graph in Cora all the time, where the top 10 all have one or two, but one has 30,000 as the value, whatever the thing is we're measuring.
Yeah.
That's not unusual at all. I see that actually quite a bit where that
Yeah,
number 4 graph is very, very common graph to see. You don't
we're
see
gonna
the graph, but you see it in the numbers. The
yeah, you see it
numbers,
in the
yeah.
numbers. Yeah.
yeah.
Is SEO factors, uh, quadrants 1, 2, and 3 are all negative SEO vectors,
Mm-hmm.
and quadrant 4 is the most interesting because it's like a surefire way to get number 8.
It is. It just says, hey, if I use 8 of it, I could get all sorts of different Y's. It's a random Y.
And there are reasons why in Cora I included the significance and the critical values, and I have a sheet with all the scatter plots of the data, and they're like the least used features in Cora. But I put them in from the start because I wanted people like Lee to chew on the numbers and look at the stats. And so that was a way of me trying to get the kind of feedback I needed to make the tool something that is more reliable going forward, and that make sure that we are understanding the data as best we can. And so, I like it when tools do that because you're crowdsourcing the statistics. And for a while, I even had a statistics advisor who I would run everything through that I'm doing with Cora. And that advisor did clinical trials and cancer research. And yeah, this stuff is important. And so I wish everyone and every tool would do a better job with it.
This goes back to your Google, show the data. My favorite tab in Cora is the overview, which is all the raw data. I mean, there's lots of other tabs that highlight, various aspects of it, and they're helpful and useful, and I like those too. But for me, the starting point is give me the raw data. Let me swim around in it and start to see patterns for myself that, may not have been found, or data errors, which we'll talk about in a minute. So the point here is a single number correlation can't fully and accurately describe the relationship in the data. These are all very different relationships with the same correlation. So just because you see a high correlating number, the picture behind it might not be what you think it is. And always look at the damn graphs. You're always going to hear me say, always look at the damn graphs.
So, Lee,
Yeah.
question on that point. Why is it that your macros don't copy over the scatter plots next to the factors that you're showing? I think that would be useful, wouldn't it?
It could. The thing is, it might be something I have to think about doing, but I look at the I look at the raw data myself, and I sort of picture this. Most people don't do that, so, but every so often, and I'll show you in a second, how I, generate the scatter plots really, really quickly, which will be useful for people that are using Cora or any
Yeah.
other sort of data so that you can
And,
get a quick picture.
and just so people know, Lee teaches with the scatter plots.
Yeah.
I was just asking about his technical tool that's a part of his training, why it doesn't include the scatter plots, because it can. But I guess it's a question of should it?
Well, in a lot of cases, we know what we're after, regardless of what the scatter plot says. So it can be a little bit different, but there are some use cases for it that I'm going to think about now.
Well, I wonder if the practical use case is if there is an anomaly in the data, you should be able to spot that at a glance.
Yeah. So here's an interesting piece. Here's two graphs. The bottom one here has a perfect correlation. It's y equals x. So it's 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Those are all the data points. The top one here, all we did is we took 50-50 here. We took that data point and just moved it up. We gave it a whole bunch of a particular factor. And you can see the correlation dropped to 0.291. What does that mean? It means it's not tightly clustered around the line. Why? Because we got one data point that's way away. So the total distance from the line changes.
Yeah, and it's a doozy. It's not like one point took a little step away. One point was massively out of scale.
Yes. So it significantly changes the correlation. Now, that's in the middle. If we look at it at the ends, if we move 0.1 or 0.100, remember, we had a 0.291 over here. Over here, now what we have is this one. Even though it's still at 1,000, it's closer to the line because the line trends up and to the right. So it's closer to the line. So the correlation improved. Here, this one is way up, but it's further from the line because the line slopes up. So down this way, it's getting further away. Now this says that there is no statistically significant relationship here. And I think that we would all say that's bullshit.
Yeah, and the way I try to tell people when they ask about the statistics is there are things that are significant and there are things that are inconclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And inconclusive does not mean it's not a factor.
Right. So again, here, in my experience, something like this outlier, it looks like a data error more than it looks like a trend, although it's possible to be the other. And this is a good example of why you always look at the damn graphs. One data point moving off of a line at distance can have a significant impact on that correlation. And if all you're looking at is the correlation number, the bottom graph, you'd sit there 0.119, it's nowhere near I'm out of here.
And believe it or not, if you're a Cora user, you might not even be aware there is a sheet dedicated to all of the graphs.
Yeah. So here's another one that I see. This one, Charles, goes kind of where you were going. So here's 2 top 5 websites with factor X. All the other websites don't have them, but 2 of the top 5 do. So is it significant or not? You're going to say yes, Mr. Taylor?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm saying, yep, I see that all the time.
All right. Is it
The way
significant?
I look at it, I don't look at it in terms of significance. I look at it in terms of this is what I could get away with. So so no one, let's just say nobody, everyone uses the keyword 10 times. Two
Yep.
people in the top 10 use it 5,000 times.
Yep.
So that tells me I could go a lot higher than 10. Quite honestly, I could go up to 5,000 easily and probably not have any problems.
Yeah.
Because if they can do, and Ted said this a million times, if they can do it, why can't I do it?
Well, I would look at a chart like this and I would say to determine significance, if we randomize the order of the data, how different would the would the line be? And I would say it probably wouldn't be very different. Um, but since they're close to the front, that could shift the significance. So I'm going to say,
Yep.
yep.
It is statistically significant. 2 data points out of 100 is enough to move it. And this is a 0, 1. That's they have it. So it could be any factor. I've seen this with, some obscure schema gets used, or it could be back when we had the WordPress theme of choice. Could be,
Yep.
it could be any little thing.
And we'll remind you, a lot of people would look at point two and say, well, it goes to one and -1. Why is point two good? Well, it's good because at 100 samples, that's something that stood out as a
Yeah.
pattern to the math. And but we wouldn't necessarily think as a human being that, oh, is this actually a thing or is
Yeah.
this an anomaly?
And and again, we're like, all right, should I include this or not? The decision about is it causal, we'll talk about next week. But just looking at this and going, 2 fucking data points is enough to give you statistical significance if they're at the ends. It's kind of like a teeter totter, 1, 2, 3, 97, 98, 99, 100 have more weight when you have a line because things are either closer or furthest from the points on the line, regardless of what the slope is at the extremes.
Yeah, and if you exclude the outliers and you randomize the data, the line would otherwise tell the exact same story. So even though its pinging is significant, I'd look at it and say, well, if those are outliers, there's actually no significance here.
Yeah. And that comes to this one. When is 0 not a 0? Both of these two graphs have a correlation of 0, but they tell different stories. The top one says everybody's got a lot of this, whatever it is. The bottom one says it's all over the
Right.
board. That's a true random thing.
But Lee, you said correlation is how tightly grouped the dots are. Why
Yeah.
is this the exception?
Because this is a flat line, and a flat line, the average at 1 and the average at 100 is the same. So
Yeah.
mathematically, there's no correlation.
And the way I describe it is if you randomize the order of that data, it would largely tell the exact same story.
Exactly. But this is also why you always look at the damn graph.
Yep.
So I'm going to show you how to fix your own Cora data, because sometimes data comes back with inaccurate data points, like word count 0 and some of the other things that
Yeah.
are just wrong.
Did you know that the World Wide Web is actually a chaotic mess of problems?
I've read that somewhere.
Yeah, people declare content encodings and then they paste in their content from Word with a different encoding. And so they're lying about their content encodings.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a ton of problems in web pages. So don't think that data problems are rare and uncommon. There's usually 8 or 10 per search if
Yeah,
you're
and you can
looking at
see,
100 results.
and there are a lot of times when you'll notice a bunch of your particular core things all have exactly 129 for the word count, and then you go look, and that's Cloudflare saying go away. It's not the page that you got to; it's some blocking thing. So, but you can clean that up. So after you delete the data, you can recalculate it. I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second to fix your own core data. So we're going to explore a little bit of data. So this is not the theoretical. This is live. This is off an HVAC core report that I ran last week. And we are going to look at the damn graphs. So the first thing I'm going to show you, this is the overview tab. All I did was I created a graph of word count. And I want you to notice in this red box down here, these are all things that have less than 100 words. Most of these are zeros. those data points are going to throw off all of your data, because if you got a 0 word count, you probably have 0 backlinks, you have 0 entities, you have 0, you're going to have zeros all over the place. And depending on where those zeros are, it can screw you up. So the first thing that I do when I take my overview is I clean it by getting rid of those columns. When you get rid of those columns, now the correlations, which are a fixed number, are incorrect. Now here you'll see when I've cleaned it, there's nothing here on the bottom. And the correlation actually in this case didn't change. That's not always the case. So let's go take a look. So here's my cleaned data. All I did, you see here, like number 19 is gone. You see here number 22 is gone because it had 0 word count, and they're all the way down through there. So I'm going to give you a column. We're going to call it new correlation. And I'm going to use the function, which is there. And I'm going to correlate the ranking with the factor data. Now I'm going to clean up a couple of things because I like things a particular way. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it always refer to the ranking data. So when I
because we're not savages.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't like fill on my stuff. And I actually like 1 extra decimal point. That's just me. Everybody else, you do you. So now you see here, before this particular factor had a 0.36, now it's a 0.25, getting rid of the bad data, not trying to make a point or prove that my hypothesis is correct by throwing out data that doesn't agree with me, just throwing out data that is not accurate. Couple of things. So you see here, I'm going to go with entities and sentences. It was at a 0.2, now it's at a 0.31. I'm going to highlight that data, insert a chart. It's just going to be a scatter. And there's the chart. And we're going to add a little trend line in it so you can see the trend line. That's it. You can see that this is, this is a nice and tightly clustered, somewhat tightly clustered around this line. You got some outliers way up here, but you got a nice trend. Now, if I go back to the previous one, the original overview, which has the bad data in it, and I take the entities and sentences here, and I do this graph, this little chart, now you can see all the data points down here where you have no entities and sentences. Why? Because you had no word count, no words, no entities. They're related. So if we toggle back and forth, you can see the impact. And if we put the trend line there, you can see the trend line is different. You can see that it drops in the second one. When it drops in the original one, you have the data points that are further away because they're down at the origin. Those data points kind of pull it down, and it makes the calculations a little bit different than before.
And Cora will complain if we see egregious data problems. So if you have too many low word counts in the top 20, Cora's going to say, I don't know about this one, guys. You may need to take a closer look. And that's what that pink warning sometimes is when you first open a Cora report.
Yeah. Now, second one that I'm going to show you guys, if we come down here, where the hell is it? This one, this variation count in the top 30 kilobytes. It is now at a 0.08. It's gone down. It was significant. Now it's nowhere near significant. Let's take a look at it and see why. What happened in the chart? Charles, what do you see in this chart, sir?
I don't see a correlation in that chart.
You don't see a correlation. Yeah. You see a little trend line down here. There is a little trend, a little slope.
I see too many outliers.
Yeah, you see a whole bunch, and they're right up here in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to the
And that's more
original.
than just the middle. I mean, yes, it's technically the middle of the chart, but if you look at that, that's over multiple pages. That's page 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's a lot
Yeah,
of outliers over a big area.
a lot of outliers over a big area. Excellent analysis. Now, if we come here and we put this little trend line, now notice where this trend line is. It's way down here where we got a lot of these zeros are here. When the zeros were here, the trend line is lower, so everything is clustered closer to the line. But when we throw out the zeros to get a true reading, the line moves up. And now all of these things are not on the line, they're well below the line because the average is moved up because of these big outliers up here. So all that's happened is, the clustering around the lines which is why the correlation went from something significant when we included the zeros. When we didn't, the average of the line moved up and it moved away from the cluster. Now I got one other fun little data point to show. I like to look at this one because this one was fun. Referring domains. All right, so here we got something that's a 0.004. That's as close to zero as one can get without actually being zero.
Yeah, and I love it. I love the heck out of this one.
You're anticipating, sir, but you're probably right.
Yeah.
So if I look at this chart, anything stand out to you, Charles, as our resident expert on all things correlation?
Yeah, this one is great news for everyone.
Yeah, this one doesn't bother me as much with only one or two outliers like that.
Yeah.
And depending on how we look at it, one of the things this could be telling me is like, oh, look what I could get away with.
It could
Potentially, because I see two outliers on page one. One not as big as the other, but I do,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this giant one is way down here. And if we take a look at it, there it is, 914,000. Let's go take a look and see who did that. Oh, look, it's Reddit.
Yeah, and that's a dumb detailer number, so that's going to be to the domain,
Yeah.
not the page.
Now, watch what happens if we actually made this a 0. The chart changes. Now notice you can start to see a little trend line on this. Even though you got these two big ass outliers, you can start to see a little
Yeah.
trend line there. But what
Yeah.
happens to the correlation? We are now in significance. Again, one data point that's extraordinary outlier makes this trend line and this relationship go away. It looks like backlinks don't matter.
The reason I like that example, if you go back to it,
Yeah.
everybody has 0. So when I see that, of course it's not going to correlate, but we know that referring domains are important. That means your off-page SEO battle is that much easier for this keyword than for other keywords.
Yeah. So for shits and giggles, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one, which is another dot. And then I'm going to go up here. Where's the big one?
And I think the basic off-page data is better than the DOM detailer one for telling the story.
It can. Yeah.
Because it's to the page. You can see the honest zeros and the big brands.
Yeah. So now when we're looking at this, but it's looking at the chart. Now you can start to see there's a little more trend. There's a little more stuff here. When we got rid of the stuff that was in the hundreds of thousands, all of that data changed. So I'm going to jump back here real fast. So that's why we look at the damn graphs. That's why you look at them, because a data point or two can just hide trend data, relationship data. So back here, understanding it's a good indicator of presence of a meaningful relationship. But just because it's 0 doesn't mean it's not a relationship. We've seen examples of that. And just because it's a high correlation, doesn't mean there's a relationship either. We've seen that it's incomplete and sensitive. All the examples that I used, I change one data point and the story changes. That's how
And
sensitive it can be.
and I don't know why, but I think I'd hire Dr. SEO.
He's got a familiar feel. Uh,
Yeah, for some reason, I think he just knows what's going on.
I think so too. This one is also one of my pet peeves where people will take a look at a core report and go, in this niche, that factor doesn't matter. You can't use correlation for that. And I hear that shit all the time.
And just FYI, if you've never used Cora before, you don't have to know statistics. We'll tell you how to use it. In fact, most of my customers don't know statistics, but I have it in there so that the people that do can check my work.
Yeah.
Lee, I'd like to add to that third bullet and say, in this, not only in this niche, that factor doesn't matter. With my or with your domain authority, I don't need that factor, or these factors aren't important.
Yeah. Because domain authority is another one of those that if you plot it, you can see a lot of times that it'll move stuff. And the question is it that factor, or is it because things with high domain authority, they've got a lot of links, they tend to have a lot of internal linking, they tend to have a lot of traffic, tend to have a lot of the signals, and they're just isolating the one that's their favorite pet peeve. Not saying domain authority doesn't matter, but I'm saying most of the way that people throw this stuff out, they don't actually know. They don't actually have proof of their theory. They just have the theory. So that one I
Yeah,
fucking hate
and
that.
and I'd tell people that correlation, it kind of narrows down a suspect list of things you should take a closer look at.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean aha, we found the answer.
You know what? But here's the thing, and this is one of the brilliant things that was built into Cora, the shared data. So for any one, I can take a look at something and say, well, it doesn't look like it matters here, or SEOs are missing the boat here. Everybody's doing the same thing here. What you can tell a lot of different stories. But when I look at does this factor correlate across hundreds or thousands of Cora reports, then all of a sudden you get statistical significance that doesn't have to be at that 0.197. It can be a lot lower because you've got a lot more data points across hundreds or thousands of Cora reports.
Yeah, but each data point was taken at the higher standard.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I like it. And I am rebuilding it for the new system. It's gonna be a big query project, so I'm no longer gonna manage massive databases myself. Um and yeah, so that's gonna continue forward as well.
I'm just going to say again, always look at the damn graphs. Don't just say, oh, the correlation is this, I should do something, or the correlation is low, I should ignore something. Look at the damn graphs. It doesn't take that long. It's really, really quick and easy to do. And next week, now that we know a little bit about how it's calculated and, how sensitive it is, next week we'll start to talk about, how do I use it to improve my SEO, which is the is it causal question.
Yeah. So when you look at Cora and you look at the coefficients and the significance, there are things you should look at more closely and carefully, and there are things that are inconclusive, so they might still be important. It's just our data didn't help us.
Yeah.
And so those are the two things you can declare with correlation.
Yeah.
These we should look closer at because there's smoke, so there might be fire. And these ones were inconclusive, so we just don't know.
Yeah. So last thing, just tell people tested SEO training starts in a couple of weeks. If you're interested, reach out. I'll say this. I am watching what is happening with technology, with AI and some of the things. And very rapidly the gap between those that have good, accurate information and good, accurate processes and those that don't is growing wider faster than I've ever seen it. There are some people that are doing some incredibly cool things with AI, and there are people who are chasing their damn tails with AI right now. And, you know, I've always found that the best current information wins in all facets. So that sounds like something you want to be part of. You're tired of chasing your tail, reach out. Just go to testedseotraining.com, jump on the calendar, get on a call with me, and we'll talk about it and see if the fit's right for you. We try to show here on SEO Fight Club all the time, good data, good analysis, and the value that is for your SEO. So again, we start in a couple of weeks. So if you're interested, you don't want to have to wait until this fall and deal with the fallout over the next 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Yeah, 8 months. Then reach out now.
Yeah, I think at some point you should offer out week 1 for free so people can see, is this something I can handle?
For the people that come into it, it's not so much that whether or not they can handle it. The switch is whether or not they can let go of their preconceptions when facing contrary data.
And can they take action, or are they going to sit on the information for months until they forget?
Yeah, that's the other piece, but that's kind of where the accountability happens in the group, where you show your results each week. You don't have to show me your site or your keywords, but you got to, say I did this and here's what movement we did or didn't get, so that we can adjust if necessary in your particular situation. So
I like that idea, Ted. So Lee, I'm going to add some work to your schedule.
thank you.
I would say instead of the week 1 being free, though, I would say maybe like a quarterly like primer session. Like let you know what you're getting in for. Let you know what this involves, both good and bad. Like, hey, this is really cool stuff, but to your point, Lee, I'm gonna challenge all your preconceptions. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna, tell you the truth about the Easter Bunny, and you're good.
Don't. That's
Well,
secret.
no, the truth is you got to leave out the carrots, but the right kinds of carrots.
Nice save.
But like I said, it's
Yeah. I think
a primer might be a cool way for people to get kind of a taste to know where they should even reach out to you and talk to you.
I actually am looking at some very, very introductory, free, and very low cost, just little modules and stuff like that, including, like some of the stuff that I hand out in week 0 before we even start the training, formalizing that and using that with people to get them an example of the training, example of the movement that can happen very, very quickly when you know what you're doing. So.
All right, let's get to some questions here. Looks like there's a lot of chatter on this one. A little surprised, a bit more, geeky than our normal episode. Let's see. You suggested asking for his presentation from Steve at IRL. He has not responded. Yeah, he's a busy guy. Let me reach out to him. He is tentatively agreed to give that presentation again on our channel. I just need to ping him and see if he's still up for doing it and get that scheduled. So I'll put that on my plate and we'll try to get him on a show here. Let's see. Number 1, retrievability and being omnipresent. Key info at the beginning and end. Use tables, one idea per paragraph. Um, that sounds familiar, but I like, I really like the way Steve presented his information. I think how he presents it is almost as important as what the information is.
Yeah.
Let's see. I started working with an SEO agency. They often change the URLs. The rationale is there's lots of upside to having a clean URL map. No, that is someone playing Star Trek Commander with their files, and no,
But
no.
more URLs are more options to rank, Ted.
And I don't want the pretty URLs, and I don't want them all to line up visually, and I don't, no, 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 no,
Making it
no,
easier for the
no,
AI
no.
to understand the topic, sir.
So,
You're right. Some URL structures can be better than others, but once the page is ranking, it's too late. It's
so Ted,
better to have good policy up front and be strict, and you can change the structure for new pages going forward. But if those pages have a lot to lose, this is a terrible idea.
You're one
I,
of those
I think it's
guys
a
that
great idea. And let me just say why I like the idea. If people go to the clients and have them change their URLs, then they can crush their traffic. And then they can hire me to recover them after a bad migration. So I love the idea. I say change all your client URLs as much as possible.
and
Just
here's
don't
my
forget
card.
to come to CTO migrations to help you save the day because you're going to need it.
All right, we're just dunking on this one. Let's go to a tougher question. All right. Comparison pages work very well, as does recency. What's happening right now, this week, this month? Um,
This is a follow-up to the first one where he's just talking
oh
about
yeah, yeah,
sort
where
of
he's
the AI and how to
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I would say all these ideas you've laid out here are plausible. And I would also say that there are multiple paths to the top, even in AI. I would test, because what you need to know is some sort of relative power differential between some of these, because some of these they might all work, but some might help a little and some might help a lot. And where is your time best spent? And so you got to get more granular information on these ideas, and that's where testing comes into place. Any recommendations on how to change the site links that appear? To my knowledge, Google only gave you the control to remove a site link, but Google has all the power in which ones they show and if they show them. So there's not a lot you can do on this, but I know there are some philosophies out there. You guys have anything to add?
I know that a lot of people would love to know how to do it, but I don't know of anybody that has a method for doing it. There may be one out there. I'm just unaware of it.
Yeah, I think some of the general recommendations is you have to have uh, obvious useful links in your top nav. Like if your top nav is a confusing mess of mega splendor, then maybe tighten that up and make it more obvious what those site links should be.
Mhm.
Um,
I miss that tool.
yeah, the other thing is I often find things I don't link in the site links, and there might be a trick here in that, like, one of the pages I never link to is the install page, because I only email it to people who buy my software. So I don't link to it from my website at all, but that one often appears as a site link. So there might be something about CTR for some of those too. And is that proven? No, but I kind of suspect Google may have found out about my install page that way.
I think Google has admitted that they use CTR on that, but maybe I'm
Yeah, it
just
was in the leak. But yeah. So that might be another avenue to getting some of those. And so there are some methods out there, but you'd have to really test to find out what works. And I don't know that any of them are a guarantee. Um, all right.
We got a
Love the
couple more that are the AI. The next one for you is why did Mr. Ted say that each local business owner should be 4 to 6 travel bloggers? And does it only apply to local? If yes, why not national?
um Well, I think it applies to AIO, absolutely, and it definitely applies to local as well, but for different but similar reasons. All right. So on the local scene, it appears to me when I look at how uh, map search works in Google that Google views the things that you configure in a profile as claims you are making, and Google prefers the profiles that have multiple forms of evidence that support those claims. And so if you're a karaoke bar in Seattle and your karaoke claim is real, then your website ought to talk about your karaoke event. Your schema ought to detail when and where exactly that karaoke event is. Your reviews ought to mention what a great karaoke night it was. And third party websites ought to have roundup articles listing the top 20 karaoke bars in Seattle, and you ought to be favorably placed on those lists when it happens. Multiple forms of evidence backing that karaoke switch as an offering from your establishment. And so you want to go and make sure that whenever you claim anything in a business profile, that you do your best to provide multiple forms of evidence for those claims. So that's why I do it for local. Now, for AIO, I recommend that you do it because AI, these large language models, are not search engines. They're not hiding the factors. There's no secret sauce in AI yet. So you can ask AI to list out, write a list of the top 20 karaoke bars in Seattle and put them in a data table. And in that data table, also have fields for the criteria you use to sort your list of the top karaoke bars and give me the values that each one had. And it'll go through, it'll say, one of the factors will be how many list articles did each karaoke bar appear in? How close to the top of those list articles? How many had top threes? And so I did it like, 20, 30 times. And it's like, wow, these roundup articles are really important to AI sorting. And so that's why I think, you kind of need to be able to change locations, right? If you're a local SEO, you need to be in Denver one week and Tallahassee the next week. So who can legitimately do that? Travel blogger. That's common for travel bloggers. You're in Australia one day and you're in Germany the next. So natural for their content. And what are travel bloggers doing? They're writing, list articles, the top 20 things to do in Berlin, the top 10 restaurants in Seattle. And so, yeah. It just makes sense that for those use cases, being 4 to 6 travel bloggers is going to get you a step ahead on building that evidence for the claims you're making in those areas. Now, is that spam? Well, maybe depends what you do, right? But if they're honest list articles where you actually try to find the best ones and you look at the evidence and you say, this is the evidence I looked at, and for these reasons, I think these are the best ones, that's legitimate content. So just make it legitimate content. Don't make it entirely bullshit. And I think it's white hat. What do you think, Lee?
I'm going to just simplify this down, whether for me, whether it's local or national, whether you do it white hat or black hat or anywhere in between, having multiple topically relevant domains that you control is advantageous.
Yep.
Period.
Yeah, that's a good redux. All right. Let's see. I got bit by the testing bug, bought 5 domains. 4 are controls. 1 is the variation test. That's a great start. And what you kind of want to start with is what is the minimum amount of test content that I need in order to get these things indexed? And so you kind of want to test your methods before you run the tests. Because if you find that your test cases never get indexed for the test keyword, there's no sense running a test yet, because you got to figure out how to get your stuff evaluated by Google and measurable in some fashion. So test your testing before you test anything else.
Yeah, so just reach out to me on Teams, and I might be able to do a couple of things to help you get started on the right path so that you can get up and running quickly and not make all the fucking mistakes that Ted and I and Charles and Terry have made.
And how can he reach you on Teams?
Test it all. If you look at the last slide of the thing, you can reach out to me on Teams, and that's that.
What did Dan Kurtz talk about at SEO Rockstars?
Buy the
Signed an
videos.
NDA. Sorry, can't.
Buy the
Go to
vids.
Rockstars.
Yeah, buy the
You can buy the
videos.
videos. Yeah, buy the videos.
All right. I came across some articles about SEO myths. Great. Could you give me your thoughts on SEO myths? Yeah. I think everyone should at least test a handful of the fundamentals in SEO, because if you can prove a handful of the fundamentals for yourself, you then instantly have a bullshit detector. Because when any content out there, any videos, any articles violates one of the fundamentals you have proven for yourself, you know to throw the rest of it out. But when any article out there or any expert out there, their data matches one of your tests, then another piece of their data matches another one of your tests, and then a third piece matches yet another one of your tests. How excited are you to hear the next thing they have to say? And so get your bullshit detector in place by proving some things to yourself that are common, and you'll be able to weed out so much nonsense.
While I was at Verizon, I had a sales rep from Bright Edge calling me out, Bright Edge, calling my boss saying that my SEO was no good and they needed Bright Edge because our title tags are too long. They were like 80 characters. They weren't even that long. So I used the test to embarrass him in front of his boss and my boss on a call. And I had no qualms doing that.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we see, and it's just way too rampant in this industry, is a lot of the articles um, lay out theory that is sounds great, seems logical, maybe
Plausible.
plausible, backed by, potentially patents and things like that. And yet you can utterly disprove with simple tests. An example is keyword density. We've heard for years now, and even more so in the age of AI, keyword density is not a thing. And yet, what we've seen the trend in the last 5 years is every year, keyword density on page one for most of the SERPs rises. And I know that I can put keyword variations in lorem ipsum and rank it.
Yeah, it
It
still works today.
still works today.
After all the web spam updates, after all the helpful content updates, after all the core updates, after all of it, still works.
Yeah, and Charles and I, we share some data back and forth, and he's seen some of my gibberish pages, just random words on a fucking page, and so there's still, if you can go and do what Ted said and test for yourself, and you know that that's true, then somebody that says, keyword density is dead, or backlinks are dead, or it's all about this
Yeah,
particular
what
thing.
is it, 2004? Well, yes, white text on a white background happens to be one of those things that still works. Google doesn't fix things, Google chases the money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the best thing. So most of these articles that you see on myths, I'd be wary of unless I had tested some of those things and then could easily discern. Like if I look at an article and it starts off with myth number one, keyword density matters, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm done with this article because clearly you haven't tested it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be saying what you're saying.
Let's see. Also have a directory site with 10,000 plus listings configured to have MySQL as my CMS with short codes. Been super fun. Yeah, database driven SEO can be quite powerful. So, yeah, I love those types of things. Um,
Yeah, full
oh, yeah.
disclosure, Ted has a number of those that he's built over the years, also still ranking.
Let's see. Based on our conversation with clients and leads, what's more important to them right now, SEO or AEO? What's important is traffic coming into the store because every person that comes in from search into your store is a customer walking in the door. And so the more customers you can bring into the shop, the more, you know, opportunity that shop has to make money. And so I would look at all of the pages that get zero site entries, zero organic search Google site entries each month because you're going to have a lot of pages that are goose eggs. And then I would go back in the archives 6 years or whatever it is and watch that episode on goose egg SEO and think about the impact you could have by turning those goose eggs from zero site entries per month to one site entry per month. And just so you know, that happens to be the theoretical minimum amount of SEO you can deliver upon a page in a month. Is to take it from zero organic site entries for 30 days to one. And you would be amazed at how little effort it can take to do that minimum amount of SEO. And when you have, like in the previous one, where they have 10,000 plus pages, when you turn 10,000 zero pages into 10,000 one visitor pages, That's 10,000 more customers walking in the door.
That was my secret at Enterprise. I would find the largest section and say, oh, there's 30,000 pages here. How can I add two or three, or dare I suggest 50% the traffic on those pages? And typically it wasn't hard to do that at all. It was just
Yeah.
very simple SEO.
So whether it's SEO, whether it's AEO, how can you get more people to walk in the door? And I'd look at both. You know, if both can get people through the door, then I want them both. It's not a one channel thing anymore.
Yeah, I think I like your answer, Ted. I think I'd go at a slightly different angle. I said that's the wrong question. You're letting your client drive what matters. If you know how to get them to make more money, you know how to get them calls, leads, form fills, add to carts, whatever it is that you do, that's the valuable thing. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, a gentleman that I met, and I just showed him some things on his phone. I said, go search for this, go search for that, look at this, look at that. And then he could start to see where perhaps some of his marketing wasn't where it needed to be. You know, I didn't have to go to a long explanation about what SEO is and how algorithms work and correlation and all that kind of stuff. It was just, this is where, where do you think your clients are searching? Let's search for that. You're not there. Here's why. Here's some things that you can do. And that sort of authority calms them, because if they're asking about the new thing, it's because they're afraid that they're being left out, that they're not getting enough, that the bus has left the station. So you can calm them a lot with um, authoritative answers that lead them in the right direction.
Let's see. What do you know about AI crawlers? We are thinking about changing platforms and want the new one to be AI ready. All right. So, two main concerns, probably a million, lesser concerns, but two main concerns. Number one, if it's heavy in JavaScript frameworks and web service calls and, client side programming to get server side features and that stuff, it's gonna be challenging. Okay. So the more sci-fi your application stack is, the harder it's gonna be. So simpler is better. It doesn't mean that it can't be done. It means that you need serious experts to make sure you don't fall flat on your face. And this is where, Jordan Pierce, would come in and say, I have no problem with server side rendering. So it works fine for me. But it's, my argument is that can be a fragile house of cards. And the next guy, once you have attrition, is going to blow it up in your face. Ticking time bomb. And I don't like ticking time bombs. Um, and so, yeah, that is one consideration that I would have is I worry when the developers uh, start rolling out the fancy stuff. All right. And the next thing is the bots. Historically, we have all been trained to block all the bots you don't know. And that's a very bad idea. So you have to stop doing what businesses have done for decades, which is block any bot you don't know. You need to have a new mindset about bots. You need to, instead of blocking bots you don't know, you need to block bots you know you don't need. All right. And so that is a different mindset. Block the bots you know you don't need. If you don't use Moz, Stop letting Moz analyze all your content and selling your tuning standards to your competitors. If you don't use SEM Rush, stop letting them analyze all your SEO standards and sell them to your competitors. Block the bots you don't need. Okay? And bots you don't know, you need to let through because they could be some new LLM. And the main one that you do want to make sure you let through is Common Crawl. All right. So if you're blocking Common Crawl, you've already shot yourself in the foot. Um, so that's what I know of it. What do you guys think?
The only thing I would say about
Yeah.
blocking bots is just be a little careful. If you're, let's say you're blocking SEM Rush because you don't use it, your client now has the potential of having someone come to them and say, your SEO is not doing anything. Look at this report I pulled up. The client needs to understand that we're blocking certain bots so that they're prepared for somebody who tries to snipe your customers. So just be aware that that can happen.
Yeah, have the argument ready that we have denied them access to your tuning standards because that is not something they need to know.
Ted, let me ask you this. Would you say it's fair or incorrect to say that if you're not blocking a bot, there's a good chance that it can crawl your site? Whether or not it will is a different, it's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, honoring the robots.text is a courtesy that bots do. It is not enforced except through legal remedies.
Yeah. So if you are not in HT access, for example, blocking an LLM, if they come, they should be able to crawl your.
Yeah, robots.text is a please. And there are other methods to enforce it server side.
I always say robots blocks polite bots, not
Yeah,
malicious
yeah.
bots.
HT access and firewalls and security appliances are a better no thank you. So yeah, robots.text is a please, and these other methods are a no thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Lost my place here. Here we go. Um, could you also be kind to give examples of tests I can run on my ecom to see how different page types can increase AI visibility?
Before you answer
Well,
that one real quick, I have to bounce to another appointment because we've run a little bit long, but I trust Ted on this particular question because you know more about that shit than anybody that I know.
thank you, Lee. Great presentation. And
You
for
got it.
this question, one of my favorite things about AI that people don't talk about enough, and there are two things that I think are amazing about AI right now. One of them is I find I can learn new things 10 times faster with AI than when I was even in college. So if you need to learn new things, if you feel like you're behind and you need to learn new things, there has never been a better time to learn new things than with AI right now. So that number one application, learning new shit, is amazing. All right. The number two thing is negative information. Not like bad or attack information, but the stuff you should have but don't. That's negative information in my definition. And AI is amazing at negative information. So, given the content of this homepage, what are some questions that customers are likely to ask that aren't already addressed in the content? AI is amazing at finding the negative information of your page, the stuff you should have but don't. And by addressing those needs, your page is going to address more queries that people are likely to ask the AI. So, what are the information vacuums on your page that your customers are likely to query? And those are the things you would want to make sure you cover and you represent well, because those information gaps will be filled by your competitors who will have a different take on that information, who might misrepresent that information. So when people are asking about a brand, if the only information the AI has about that brand on that particular need comes from a competitor, then you've basically outsourced your brand to the competition. And you don't want to do that. What do you guys think?
I think you're right. AI is the answer to that question. You can ask it, look at my competitors, look at this site, and this site, see what they're doing, and find what they are missing that I'm also missing, that
Or
I can add that they don't have.
yeah, or where their information about me is incorrect according to my website. Boom.
Just be specific in your prompts, I would say. Asking, a lot of people are going to AI, and I just had a client do this recently. He set up a Claude MCP server, all the whiz bang, and it told him to shorten all of his title tags to below 65 characters. And I'm like, that's a bad idea, dude. I don't care if the AI told you that. That's a bad idea. So I like your guys' prompts better than just open-ended answer questions.
Yep. What's the amount of search queries averages are shown in top SEO Factors website, a ballpark number? Typically in a season, let's call a season a 6 month period. The windows in top SEO Factors tend to be tens of thousands of different keywords. So that's about the ballpark of what we're working. It is a moving window. Some years are bigger than other years because some years I have more customers than other years. And so the windows get bigger or smaller to adjust because I try to keep it in a ballpark of tens of thousands of different keyword searches. But keep in mind, these keywords are skewed because most of my customers are SEOs doing client SEO. So most of my keywords are clients that are targeted via SEO services. So for me, I think that's a good cohort. But scientifically speaking, that is a skewed cohort. Um, let's see. How can I design a page so that it both ranks well in Google and in AI tools? It's hard to do both. Well, that's a question where Lee would say you might be asking the wrong question. Because there are keywords right now where even if you rank number one, let alone page one, you still might be below the fold on page one. You might actually require a scroll event or two to actually become visible. And when you think about Google as 10 blue links, it was always pagination events. And they said, oh, if you had to go to page two, if you had to click a button to see it, a user interaction to see it, that's the best place to hide a dead body because traffic isn't there. All right. So now you're 3 user events away from being visible. Isn't that page 3? Effectively? So you're even worse than the best place to hide a dead body. All right, that's how the game is changing, is these Google is hiding things behind user interactions. Technically, it's page 1, but page 2 used to be 1 user interaction away. But your page 1 position is some scroll events.
And while you're optimizing for AIO and SEO, don't forget CRO.
Yep. And what does page 1 mean now that number 6 is effectively page 5 and user interactions? So you need to, people ask the question constantly, where did my traffic go? And the correct answer is the traffic never moved. It's still above the fold on page 1. So, what opportunities for your keywords do you have above the fold on page 1? And have you triaged those keywords? For some keywords, all of page 1 and all of page 2, based on user interactions to make them visible, are ads. For those keywords, you're probably better off saying, let's let pay-per-click handle those. And these ones that actually have organic opportunities on page 1, these ones we should SEO. Because that way you're going to get fast return on the ad ones and not waste your time and still end up being effectively page 3. And you can work on the SEO ones that stand to add value and deliver value on those. But if you're not separating your keywords into opportunity buckets and handling them correctly, you're probably doing SEO on keywords that will never bring value in the current environment. So many people right now are running their tuning list based off of search volume and CPC and don't realize that a lot of those keywords they will never deliver SEO value for, even if they get top 3. So, take a look at the opportunity, your keyword research. That's where Google's changing the game right now. They're not changing it in the algorithm and with the factors, those are still the same. The game is changing in the opportunities. All right, let's see. Um, how do you think featured images in blog posts are bad for CRO? That's a weirdly phrased question. Um, if they're too big, I mean, they would make it slow for someone at a bus stop. I think blogs are tricky. They're kind of better for local SEO because your faucet repair blog post can actually get your profile ranked for faucet repair. Even though the profile links to the homepage, Googlebot's going to crawl the whole site, say, hey, this site has a blog post on faucet repair. I should rank this business profile for faucet repair that happens to link to the homepage, even though the homepage isn't tuned for faucet repair. That's kind of how that works. So for local plumbers, a blog is a useful thing. For national terms, like an online retailer, a blog can cause problems with cannibalization. And in those cases, I often like to separate the blog onto its own domain name so that the store and the blog posts, the editorial content, can rank side by side instead of ranking in place of each other. So you want to think about your use case of the blog and the type of marketing you're doing, because the answer can change. What do you think, Charles? You deal with blogs a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I was thinking about when I heard that question was, well, what's the CRO that you think you're going to lose on the blog? Like, what are you trying to get the people to do on the blog where you think the large image at the top is going to get them to stop doing something? Or do
Well,
you think that people going to the blog just aren't going to go to your store or convert someplace
yeah, it's a
else?
step removed from the conversion is the philosophy, but I think you got to think about the marketing opportunities differently now
Yeah,
because the blog is going to let you get keywords that the store can't.
exactly.
All right. So if your store is selling poker tables, the blog can talk about the man cave and thus can appear in front of popcorn machines.
Right.
All right. So the blog expands your keyword reach into keywords that the store otherwise wouldn't.
We had I worked at an e-commerce company that did party supplies, and we had these party guides, essentially a blog, but we called it our party guides. And it was big content. It was talking about how to do a Minnie Mouse party, how to do a princess party, how to do whatever. And in the blog, we would have a big image at the top that showed a really pretty party, all decorated and everything, and then the content below it. That was necessary because it would that image was necessary to draw people in and say, "Oh, that looks so pretty. I want to learn more." And then as they went down the blog actually served as like a almost like a category page because it essentially linked within the content to all the different products to do this thing. Um, so in that case, the image didn't hurt CRO at all. The image was vital to get people to stay on the blog and read the post. So um,
Yep. And a an entire experience isn't necessarily something that a single store page would cover.
right. Right, right. I would look in general, think when you think about CRO, anything that would slow down or stop a customer. And really the stopping of the customer is the key. So anything can hurt CRO. What would an image in a blog post hurt CRO? Nah, not necessarily. Would it stop the person from reading the blog post? If it's not stopping the person from reading the blog post, I don't see how it would hurt you, but that's my 2 cents.
Let's see. Have y'all tested with Weavite and vectorized chunking content for unique article creation? I have not. When I saw chunking, I was thinking more low level because that's something that web servers can do to more efficiently transfer the page to the client. But vectorized chunking sounds like, it's, more AI-ish. So yeah, I don't know. Have you guys heard of these tools?
I've never even heard of those things, so I can't help with that.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
Yeah,
we don't know everything. And this is a
I'm not
case.
familiar with the term, but they may be talking about chunking might be the alternative to the generative AI. Like there's a piece of software from Mercury, and not from the planet, but company that does not write generatively. It writes the entire article in an instant and then edits itself to fit the topic versus going with the next letter and the next letter. Uh, you Google Mercury, and I think Inception or some variation on the word Inception is the actual software, but it writes that way. Um, so it writes differently. And I've never gotten any emojis with it, but I've never told it to or not to get them either.
Yeah, right now on this question, I'm afraid to say you're our leading expert on this, so we would have to direct this question back to you. So we'll see. Maybe ask it when Clint's here because Clint tends to know a lot more tools than I do. Um,
And ask him on SEO this week. If you get the
yeah,
chance.
yeah. Ask him on SEO this week. Lee, where do I find your info? He is tested all one word, all lowercase on Microsoft Teams. So reach out to him. Or testedseotraining.com. And he ranks for tested SEO training as a keyword too. Let's see. Oh, he put that there. Okay, so yeah, you have it. Um, Great. Let's see. Skip navigation, goose egg SEO, create avatar, image SEO, Fight Club SEO, episode 70. Yeah, Fight Club, uh, episode 71. We have hundreds of episodes, so yeah, it's hard to remember exactly which one someone said something. So that's a really good call out, knowing that it's episode 71. So yes, about 5, 6 years old, most likely. Can a website still create a listicle post and list themselves as number one? Technically, they can, but you don't have to. That's why if you're 4 to 6 travel bloggers, that's not an issue. So
And I'd suggest if you're going to try that, list yourself at number 2 or 3, but make it a hot link versus the others that are just the name,
yeah, it
but
would
not
be
linking.
it would be funny if Google really had a stick up their butt about that. I would find that comical because Google still allows uh, uh, aggregate ratings with one review to have 5 stars and have it displayed in search. So literally, Google's behavior would be contrary to that stick in their keister. So
And their whole production model has been about lists. So,
yeah. Let's see. Do you have a point of view on doorway pages related to local SEO? Are multi-location businesses targeting more than one city, more than one service, creating doorway spam? There are a lot of methods that have worked in the past and don't now. There are a lot of methods that do work now that didn't work in the past. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of methods in the future that will work that don't work now. So a lot of that stuff can change. And in addition to that, there are a lot of ways to get to number one, different paths. There's not one way to do it. There's many, many ways to do it. Um, and so keep that in mind. And because of all of that, you actually need to try things to know what works, aka testing. And the other thing is you need to be mindful of where your time and money is best spent. And so you got to think minimum viable. So in my case, I've been able to do well without doorway pages. It's not to say they don't work. I would say if I can get to where I need to be without using it, isn't that more profitable for my time and resources? And so I think when you start to have your own model of minimum viable SEO, you can often short circuit SEO by saying, what would this do to my profitability if I made it part of how I did things? And if the answer is, well, it would wreck my profitability, I would have a smaller roster if I did that for every client, then it doesn't matter if it works, right? Because it's not going to work for you. And so I would rather have you short circuit your thinking and get to things that are going to help you and your clients better with the time you have. And so I would consider that before I add anything to my hypothetical engine tuning of the SEO that is what you offer. And we should all be, tuning that engine hypothetically. How can we make our SEO more efficient and more effective, not less efficient and ineffective, you know? So, not to say it doesn't work, probably works great, many ways to the top. What do you think, Terry?
Research it.
Yep.
Look at the successful companies in your niche. See what they're maybe they're not in your city. Maybe they're in another city. But see what they're doing if they're successful and then decide, is that something I want to spend the time and energy to do? Is it worthwhile? Obviously, if it's going to cost me more than I'm going to get a return on, it, like Ed said, it doesn't matter if it works. But um,
Yeah. Years ago, someone came to me with an idea. They're like, Ted, I just discovered how to rank a page for any keyword easily. Just rank every page on the site for that keyword and have them all link at the one you want to have rank at the top. And I listened to that. I was like, yeah, that sounds like that would probably work. I see what you're doing there. I can't say that wouldn't work. But I can currently rank a page with SEO on the one page. You're saying rank a page by doing SEO on every page on the site. I can't make money doing that. And so yeah, you got to think about it before you dive in. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Terry. We will see you next week. And if we missed your question, just feel free to bring it next week or ask Clint on SEO this week. And we'll talk to you then. Thank you.